Good morning and welcome to the Morning Scoop for Wednesday, October 7th. This is your Daily Buckeye Fix. I'm Tom Orr. The first football Saturday of the Big Ten season, now 17 days away. The game against Michigan, 66 days off. The start of the first game week for the Ohio State football team is just over a week away, which sounds crazy when you think about it like that. That means it is crunch time for guys trying to lock down spots in the starting lineup or in the two deep. It also means this is the time when our insiders shine and bring you the great information from the inside the Woody Hayes Athletic Center that you just can't get anywhere else. Alex Gleitman dropped his ADEC column Tuesday morning with some really interesting information on this year's team. Tuesday afternoon, it was time for our ultimate insider, NevadaBuck, to share what he had learned. Nevada is my guest this morning. You had seven big nuggets that you shared on Tuesday afternoon. We're going to touch on just a few of them here. First of all, let's start with the most popular player on any football team, the backup quarterback. There has been a race, that race has drawn a lot of attention. Nevada, what are you hearing about that race right now?
Yeah, well, first of all, Tom, thanks for having me on. It's a real exciting time around the football team, as you can imagine. It's unlike any other preparation season that we've ever seen before, and the backup quarterback race is certainly one that's got everybody's attention, especially in the era of COVID, where your backup quarterback is one positive test away from being the starting quarterback. So what I've got is that C.J. Stroud, the fabulous freshman from the West Coast, like I said, both from the West Coast, but he's from further west, is starting to distance himself and has really kind of emerged as the clear number two. And they've really started to see what he can do. And Justin Fields is obviously a special quarterback at Ohio State, but CJ's got a lot of the same attributes. And it'll certainly be a smooth transition when it comes time. And I like Miller a lot. I just think Stroud has started to distance himself. And if something happened to Fields, God forbid, that Stroud would get the nod, and we'd be excited to see what he could do.
It's interesting that he's able to potentially get himself in a spot to maybe claim that backup job already without the benefit of actually going through spring ball. I mean, there was a lot of talk about what missing 12 of those 15 practices was going to do in terms of his development and Miller's development. But, I mean, one thing that I think may have helped them is while they couldn't do contact practices all summer, they were able to do a lot of 7-on-7 stuff before they were able to get back to a more regular practice schedule. And as a quarterback, I mean, that can get you through not all of, it doesn't get you completely up to speed, but you're able to maybe not fall quite as far behind as maybe some of the guys, along the offensive and defensive lines did.
Yeah, there's no question that the non-contact stuff is heavily weighted towards the skill positions, specifically the quarterback position. You can learn an awful lot in terms of doing that, and it also helps with both those kids. Stroud and Miller are just fabulously talented players, and so when you've got great raw material like with that, and some terrific distance learning modules that Ohio State's kind of put in for their players, especially for the quarterback position, that I think that you're going to see guys that are better prepared than the typical freshman would be in a situation like this. So it's a very exciting time.
Yeah, and something else that helps with that, I think, is Ryan Day talked to us last week about the fact that he was able to work directly with Justin Fields and let Corey Dennis, the quarterback coach, work directly with the young guys and sort of divide and conquer that way a little bit. So that probably helped as well, having a little more direct attention from Corey Dennis for those younger guys. In addition to the quarterback position, you had a really interesting piece of information about one of the most beloved characters on the team, offensive lineman Dwan Jones. We saw him have an impact on special teams last year on field goal block. He's someone whose flexibility means he could slot into either guard or tackle. He is obviously someone who is a very memorable character on that team. What have you learned about Dwan Jones this over the break?
Well, with Dwan, it's always one of the question marks on him was could he control the weight, and he moves fabulously well for a big guy, and one of the concerns when he came to Ohio State was how well the strength and conditioning program would agree with him, and one of the things that we picked up is that when Ohio State dismissed and everything kind of broke for COVID, and he went home, that staying on the structured Ohio State program was difficult for him, and he actually was in a position where the weight became an issue again, and almost to a point probably a little bit more severe than people would even know. And, now he's back. He's back in the good graces of the strength and conditioning staff, and he's looking terrific, and has worked himself into the top 6 or 7 rotation for Ohio State offensive linemen, and everybody's intrigued by what he can do. But what was interesting to me was it pointed out again how important the structure of Ohio State's program is for these kids on so many different levels. Whether it's health, nutrition, just their general well-being. That being in that Ohio State bubble is important, and how easy it is for them to slide off the bubble. And I kind of shared a little story about a former Ohio State player, Marcellus Jones from Glenville, and people that don't remember Marcellus, a terrific offensive lineman, and really had a tough camp at Ohio State, and Ohio State pulled the red shirt and actually played him, and people were shocked. They're like, he was one of the first players to play, and the reason was the coaching staff didn't want to have him away from the program. They didn't want to send him back to Glenville and not have a structured type of situation. And that's kind of what we had with Dwan for just a short period of time. And his weight got dangerously close to a point where it'd be tough for him to play. And so it shows you, the razor's edge these kids are on, and the importance of having them around the great staff and the great strength and conditioning staff with Nicky Marotti and Dwan Jones is certainly a great story and somebody that we're all rooting for.
Yeah, and if you wonder why Mickey Marotti has the assistant athletic director or associate athletic director or whatever his title is, like that's why he is very, very good at what he does and getting these guys in really good shape and having a real solid program for them. And that was something he talked about was a real challenge. This was not a one size fits all program for them when they were home, even just by position group. Obviously the punters aren't going to do the same workout that the offensive linemen are, but even the offensive linemen, it was like, okay, what do you have in your home that you can work out with? And some guys were lifting, Matthew Jones, the offensive lineman from Brooklyn, was lifting milk jugs filled with dirt for a while. And some guys had much more stuff, stuff available to them in their homes. And some of them, it was just like, well, what do you have that you can, it was like Apollo 13. Like, what do they have in the capsule? Okay, we're going to have to solve the problem with that. So what does Dwan Jones have in his home that he can lift? Okay, we got to solve the problem with that. So yeah, that was a really uniquely challenging spot. One thing it's super intriguing to me, Dwan Jones, like where he could fit this year. Because, you just said he's potentially one of the top 6 or 7 linemen on this team. We've seen him in some of those little snippets from practice working at guard. He's obviously still, at least theoretically, in the running for that right tackle position. That's a really valuable little Swiss Army knife for them to have a guy who could potentially be the top backup at a couple different spots.
Yeah, well, he like I said, he's just a massive human being, and when you have a guy like that can move like he can, and his functional tackle, can play on the interior line, and we've just seen it year in and year out where those guys have proved to be invaluable for Ohio State. Heck, I was talking about it earlier today with Bank and with Kirk. People forget when Ohio State won the national championship, their last national championship, the right tackle was Darryl Baldwin. You know what I'm saying? So a former defensive player turned to offensive guard. So have guys that can move like that can go up and down the line. No, he's gonna be a real valuable piece of the Buckeyes this year for sure.
You had a bunch of really other great information in your insider report about guys like Paris Johnson, Master Teague, Thayer Munford, and others. But let's talk about a different player who has been a surprise in fall camp, freshman defensive lineman Ty Hamilton. What are you hearing about him?
Well, Ty is just a really intriguing prospect. He's a guy that you want to get him on the field, and he's really advanced in terms of his burst, his ability to hand fight, and his ability to understand leverage. He's really an intriguing prospect. He's a guy that's been flashing every time he's been on the field, and a lot of people thought after Jack Sawyer he might have been the second best defensive player in Ohio last year, and he's a real good player. And Ohio State's got a real challenge this year in terms of interior defensive line, and he answers some of those questions for them because he can play that 3 technique spot, and is he big enough to hold up? We'll see, but they've been sliding him down there. He's creating some matchup problems, and they like what he can do. So I'm real high on him, and I know the Ohio State staff is as well. So he's another one to watch for sure.
Well, and one thing that could help that transition for him is he's really kind of been around that Ohio State program for a number of years. For people who don't know, he is the younger brother of Dejuan Hamilton, who was the nose tackle on last year's team, and now off to the NFL. But he and his family have been around the program. It's interesting. They've got two younger brothers, Marcus Hooker, who is going to be a safety this year, and younger brother of Malik Hooker, the great Ohio State safety from a few years ago. Got a couple younger brothers potentially maybe getting on that too deep on the defense this year. Hamilton, was listed as a defensive end coming out of high school. As you mentioned, he's expected to slide inside to that 3-tech spot, either this year or at least at some point in his college career. That potentially makes for a very smooth transition to my next question, which is, what's your biggest position of concern on this year's team right now?
Well, it's it's clearly got to be interior defensive line, and I think we're loaded at defensive end. I think it's probably a tie between that and some the cornerback. We're a little thin at cornerback, but getting Sean Wade back obviously helped considerably there. But I've always thought it started up front on both sides of the ball, and how good you are depends on how good your defensive line is and how good your offensive line is. Well, we know this offensive line is going to be one of the best, if not the best, in the country. I think our defensive ends will be will be more than good enough to get us where we need to go. But the question is, can the interior defensive line stop the run and create that type of pressure, create that push? And that's a big question mark for me. So it's going to be interesting to see over the next 2.5 weeks how that shakes out.
Yeah, can they clone Tommy Togiai? That would go a long way if they could figure out a way to do that before the Nebraska game. Is there a guy who you think is the biggest potential breakout candidate this year? This could be either someone who's going to get their first chance to start, or even a true freshman who can make any early impact. Or if you want to give us one of each, that's fine too.
Yeah, well, I think the guy that's going to break out. I mean, you're talking about a real breakout player in terms of high impact, high visibility type of thing. That's Trey Sermon. That's a guy that we haven't had a chance to transfer from Oklahoma. He's just a terrific all around player, and a guy that's really really at taking a position that was kind of a question mark for Ohio State at running back, and I think it's going to become a team strength now. Between him and Master Teague. So I think the Trey Sermon is something that we've heard a lot about, but it's all legit. I mean, he's fully recovered from the injury, and when you see the things that he can do, he's a willing blocker. He can catch the ball out of the backfield, and obviously he's got the wiggle and he's got the speed to take it to the house. He's everything you want out of an Ohio State running back. So I think he's poised for a big season. In terms of the freshmen, I mean, man, there's so many. It's such a talented group. But I'm going to go Henry Fleming. I think Fleming is a guy that he's come in with a lot of hype, but that wide receiver position is probably the most talented group of freshmen that we've ever had at Ohio State, and that's really saying something. But the stuff that Fleming can do, he's just physically so gifted. And adjusts to the ball so well. His grip strength's terrific. Eye discipline's terrific. He's just different level. And I think that he's a guy that I'm expecting big things out of. And I think him and Fields have already developed that chemistry. And I think it's something that opposing defensive backs are going to have to account for sure.
It's interesting that you picked Julian Fleming. Tony Gerderman and I did this answered this question on Buckeye Weekly on Tuesday on an episode that may have popped up in your Morning Scoop episode feed on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. That was either because we decided to generously make it a bonus episode for you, or because I screwed up and put it in the wrong podcast episode. Who's to say? It's definitely one of those. You're welcome. But on that episode, Tony and I were talking about it, and I think we both picked Jackson Smith and Jigba, but G. Scott is obviously a solid candidate there as well. I mean, it sure seems like within that freshman wide receiver group, there's really not a bad choice there in terms of guys who could make a pretty early impact there and for Brian Hartline's room.
Yeah, well, Jackson's got some amazing skills. I put on nugget about some of his ability to catch the ball. I think they're going to have him back on punt return because he's just, his ability to catch the ball is just unlike – I wouldn't say anything I've ever seen, but it's rare. I mean, he's got a rare gift in terms of being able to, and if you've ever gone back and tried to catch a punt, it's not easy. It's not easy under the best of conditions. I think I still have nightmares of Kirk Barton at the spring game where they put him out there trying to catch a punt, and I don't think he got within like 15 yards of the ball, let alone trying to catch it, in the wind and the rain and with guys bearing down and you're trying to take your head off, people screaming at you. But he makes it look really, really easy, and I think he's a guy that people haven't talked a lot about, and like you said, it's those fabulous freshmen are all going to make noise, and it's going to be fun to watch. It's a talented group for sure.
Well, during Urban Meyer's era at Ohio State, Ryan Day, kind of towards the end of the Urban Meyer era, emerged as a very strong number two to Urban in a lot of ways. And one thing you've talked about in recent weeks is the emergence of Kerry Combs as someone who is maybe kind of taking that role under Day now at Ohio State this year. Can you sort of talk a little bit about what Combs has brought to the program since he's come back from the Tennessee Titans?
Yeah, well, he's come back as a different guy. People have to remember that when he left Ohio State, I'm not saying he'd been demoted, but he was the special teams coach, and now he goes to the NFL, has a nice little tenure there, and now he's back as the defensive coordinator in charge. I mean, Madison's certainly helping out, but Kerry's certainly a dominant voice. But it's been interesting just to see kind of Kerry kind of starting to assert himself with other people as well. He's picked up things about the offense. He's picked up things about special teams, obviously with his background. And he's becoming kind of a clear number two there on the staff, and really a vocal leader and a guy that the other staff members turn to. So I'm excited to see what they do now. Again, he's right in the firing line. Ohio State defense is going to be, the question for Ohio State fans this year. And if they struggle, if they have some problems, he's going to have to account for that. So, Kerry's an experienced guy. He knows what he's getting himself into, but he's definitely become a vocal leader, not only of the kids, but of the other staff members. And that's always a plus when you have that, because you need to have those other guys on the staff that can take everything up. It definitely takes a village to manage an organization this big.
Well, when people hear your name, they probably think about exactly what we're talking about today, all the insider nuggets and reports. But one of the other things you do, one of your other projects with Buckeye Scoop, is you run trivia on Sunday nights. Let everyone know a little bit about trivia, how they can join, and what they can win.
Well, trivia's just been so much fun. I'm having so much fun with the trivia game. We're running it Sunday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern time. You can go to BuckeyeScoop.com or Buckeye Scoop, our Twitter, and click on the link, and it's literally all you have to do is enter your email address, and boom, you're playing. It doesn't cost any money. You don't have to sign up or anything like that. And first prizes are cash and some terrific rare football cards. So sponsored by LJ's Card Shop. So we're having a great time with trivia, and it's generally 10 to 12 questions, takes 10 minutes of your time. We're going to more general sports questions. So, if you've got a sports background or just a sports interest, get a group together, play the game. And it's so much fun. I know I play against my sons every weekend, and we play for bragging rights in the house. And, like I said, it's free. So what's not to like? So I'd really like to see people get out there for some Buckeye Scoop trivia.
Yeah, it is a lot of fun. It is and really, really no kidding, like 10 minutes free, and you can win. Last weekend, I think we gave away $250. We've given away $100 before, and you also some very cool Ohio State themed football cards. Dwayne Haskins rookie cards and Nick Bosa cards, and so stuff you as an Ohio State fan would probably be interested in. So, thank you very much for joining us today, Nevada. Buckeye Scoop subscribers can read the rest of Nevada's practice report on our Ask the Insiders board, along with great insider pieces from Alex Gleitman, Ross Fulton, and Mark Givler. Those are the guys I mentioned off the top of this episode. That's just the stuff that's gone up in the first 2 days of this week. If you are the type of Ohio State fan who's interested in what's going on inside of practice and not just, showing up at the first game and who's the starting running back this year? Like if you want to know now, you are the type of person that would enjoy a subscription to BuckeyeScoop.com. And lucky you can get one right now. Just go to BuckeyeScoop.com to sign up for that. Your first month will now include a couple game weeks. Your first month now includes the Penn State game. This seems like a really good time to become a member of BuckeyeScoop.com. It is the price of a lousy chain store pizza or less than the 12-pack of lousy domestic beer. So why don't you treat yourself, save some calories, treat yourself to a month of great insider content at BuckeyeScoop.com. You can also find all of our great podcasts on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, SoundCloud, Spreaker, all the good places you like to, wherever you like to find wherever fine podcasts are sold, you can find Buckeye Scoop Podcast. Just search Buckeye Scoop wherever that is. You can find all of our shows there. Subscribe to whichever ones you like. Also, please leave us a 5-star rating and review while you're there. That does it for today. Thank you guys for listening. Have a great day. We will talk to you tomorrow.